First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh Hashem, Hashem HaKadosh. I came into this late, but realised it's the feast day today, feast dedications. I'm going to read from the Maccabees. Got my little menorah thing set up, kind of got my stuff together, put a few drinks out. Okay, so this ain't the way I ain't turning up as hard as I should be turning up, but I came into this knowledge late, so I'm just doing the best I can. And it happened after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came unto the land of Chetim, had smited Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, so much that the earth was quiet before him. Whereon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over the countries and nations, and the kings who became tributaries unto them. After these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honourable, and that had been brought up with him from his youth, and departed his kingdom among them while he was alive. So, Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves, so did their sons after them many years, and the evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came after them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have so much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward therein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen. So this is the Greek gymnasium, the Greek Olympiads and all that sort of thing, oiling up their bodies and greasing each other down. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves unto the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of two realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him, and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they took strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took spoils thereof. And after Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again to the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, that's rude, and took away the golden altar, and the candlestick of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the shewbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crowns, and the gold. Man's got no respect, man. And the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels, and he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Therefore there was great mourning in Israel, in every place where they were, so that the princes and the elders mourned, and the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation. So bridegroom is meant to be the happiest people about to get a wife, and man's just screwing. And she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness, and even the wife, man, she was meant to be looking forward to being married to her husband, but there wasn't any time for, joy or mirth. The land was also moved for the inhabitants thereof, and the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king set his chief collector to the tribute unto the cities of Judah. So you gotta pay tax, because when you're, when you've been overtaken, you get to keep your people. They might spare your life, but you gotta pay tribute. The king is gonna come and take what he wants every so often. Usually in the form of taxes. And spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him great credence, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote it very sore and destroyed much people of Israel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive and possessed the cattle. Excuse me. It's like they builded the city of David with a great strong wall and with mighty towers, and made it stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and forfeited themselves therein. They stored it also with armour and victuals, and when they had gathered up together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare, for it was a place to lie in wait against a sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it, insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and their own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like wilderness, her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbath into reproach, her honour into contempt. This is a powerful book, man. And this had been her glory, so was her dishonour increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that they should be one people, and every one should leave his laws, so that all heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many of the Israelites consented to this religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbaths. For the king had sent letters by messengers into Jerusalem, cities of Jerusalem. And this is what generally the game is about. The game is about to pull you away from your inheritance, to get you to eat pork, to get you to defile yourself, so that you no longer come under the promises. This game has never changed. It's always the same. For the king had sent letters by messenger unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and thus they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. You see? That they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable of the manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. It's the same thing. The crafty counsel, Psalms 83, same thing. Ain't changed. It's always, they always want to move you from your religion, and why? Their God's so powerful, let them keep their God. Stand now with your sorcerers and enchanters, isn't it? 50, and whosoever will not do according to 49, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. Forget them as a nation. That is, the crafty counsel, so that they'll no longer be a nation and they forget themselves. I can't remember what the actual scripture is. I'll come back to it. And whosoever will not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, he shall die. And the self-same manner wrote he to the whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice, city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succour. Now the 15th day of the month, Caslu, in the 145th year, they set up an abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded an idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. And this is, abomination, desolation. I think that's mentioned in Matthew 38 or 44, I can't remember. And burnt incense on the doors of the houses and in the streets. And when they had rent the places, they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found. They burnt them with fire. And wheresoever was found with any book of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandment was that they should be put to death. Thus they did by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as they found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice unto the idol, upon the idol altar which was upon the altar of God. So they just profane, messing up, mashing up, dirtying up the place, man. And on which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that caused their children to be circumcised, and they handed infants about their necks and rifled. So this is as prophesied, and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Israel were resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they chose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. It was a very great wrath upon Israel. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joarib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons: Joman called Cadiz, Simeon called Thassi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphos. So I don't know why they have these 2 names, but I mean, I know as a Nigerian second generation, sometimes you get your own Hebrew name or your own Nigerian name, and then you get a name, an English name, or whatever kind of name for the country that you're in. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me, wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered unto the land of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. Their temple has become a man without glory. Their glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath not had part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? All the ornaments are taken away of a free woman. She is a bondslave. She has become a bondslave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. They mashed it, man. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Then Matthias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city, Modin, to make sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Matthias and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Matthias, on this wise, thou art a ruler and an honourable and great man in the city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first, and fulfil the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah, and such as remain at Jerusalem, so that thou and thy house be in number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honoured with silver and gold and many rewards. And Matthias answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments. Yet I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our religion, either on the right hand or on the left. Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all the set in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar, which was Modin according to the king's commandment. Which thing when Mattai saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to the judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and altar he pulled down. Thus he dealt zealously for the law of God, like the fiends did unto Zambri, the son of Salom. And Matthias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that ever they had in the city. The many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because of the afflictions sore upon them. Now when it was told the king's servants that the host that was at Jerusalem in the city of David, that certain men had broken the king's commandment and were gone to secret places in the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day. And they said unto them, Let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. But they said, We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. So they gave them battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, Let us all die in our innocency. Heaven and earth shall testify for us that ye put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and slew them with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. Now when Matthias and his friends understood thereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him, neither will we die, all us our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. So they're saying now, if we don't fight back, if they come after us on the Sabbath, hold on, let me see. Let me say this in this sentence. Yeah, if we don't fight against them on the Sabbath, then they're gonna kill us, man. So we're gonna have to fight. So 42. Then they came unto him a company of Assyrians, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law. So that's just the city that they come from. That they're still Israelites. Also, all that fled from persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor, for safety. I believe that means. Then Matthias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. So they didn't kill the children, if they've been going on heathen. They pursued after the proud man, and the work prospered in their hand. So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles and out of the hand of the kings. Neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. So they were just smashing up people. And when the time drew near that the Matthias should die, he said unto the sons, Now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall ye receive great honour and everlasting name. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation? It was imputed upon him for righteousness. Joseph in the time of his distress kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt. Fiends, our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of the everlasting priesthood. Yahushua, for fulfilling the word, was made a judge in Israel. Caleb for bearing witness before the congregation received the heritage of the land. David for being merciful possessed the throne of the everlasting kingdom. Elias for being zealous and fervent for the law was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Mishael by believing was saved out of the flame. Daniel for his innocency was delivered from the mouth of the lions. And thus consider ye throughout all the ages that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned to dust, and his thought is come to nothing. Wherefore, my sons, be valiant and show yourselves to be men in the behalf. And this is a message, could be a message to us, It's like, we're still sons, Wherefore, my sons, be valiant and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law. For by it shall ye obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Simon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him alway. He shall be a father unto you. As for Judas Maccabeus, he had been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain, and fight the battle of the people. Take also unto you all those that observe the law, and avenge ye the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the law. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers, and he died in 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchres of his fathers at Modin. Sepulchres at Modin, and all Israel made great lamentation for him. I'm going to shut off there. I'm going to turn up and get my food, my drink on, and enjoy myself. Happy feasts. Shalom.